Gisbergen will not run the AllStar race in 2024. Erik Jones has medically cleared and will return at Darlington, and Stenhouse Jr. has signed a multi-year contract extension with JTG Doherty. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got a ton of NASCAR and the motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're first going to take a look at a ton of throwback and regular paint schemes that we're going to see over the course of the next couple weeks. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into it. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Taylor Gray's 2024 Mark Green throwback scheme. This looks great in my opinion. Obviously, with Jeff Hensley working with Mark Green back in the day, it makes a lot of sense to do this. I think this looks really solid, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing it on the racetrack at Darlington. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Justin Allgaier's 2024 Hellman's RCPT USA scheme that we're going to see at Charlotte. This looks pretty good in my opinion. Hellman's always has some really good traditional schemes. This one's no exception. It looks good. Looking forward to see it on the racetrack. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Todd Gilliland's 2024 Cars Tour throwback scheme to when he won at the Cars Tour back in 2015. This looks really good in my opinion. Really solid looking throwback. Definitely looking forward to see on the racetrack at Darlington. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Brendan Poole's 2024 Kyle Petty throwback scheme, which is a throwback to Kyle Petty's Hot Wheels scheme from 1997. This looks really awesome in my opinion. Alpha Prime's done a really good job on her throwbacks. This one's no exception. It looks really, really great. I'm definitely looking forward to see on the racetrack at Darlington. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Daniel Dye's 2024 Kyle Petty throwback scheme to 1989 when Kyle Petty drove for Sabco. This looks really solid in my opinion. It looks pretty great. I'm definitely looking forward to see on the racetrack at Darlington. Looks pretty exciting overall. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Martin Truex Jr.'s 2024 Martin Truex Jr. throwback to his 2016 win at the Southern 500. Not a big fan of this one. It looks good on its own, but as a throwback, no. This ain't a throwback in my opinion. It needs to be a little more intrusive, a little more creative, and to me, I think it's a little bit over creative, or it's not really creative in my opinion. It definitely could be a lot better. Next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Daniel Suarez's 2024 Adrian Fernandez throwback. This looks amazing in my opinion. Trackhouse has done a great job on throwbacks in the past. This one's no exception. They did an amazing job. Looking forward to see on the racetrack at the throwback weekend. This looks absolutely amazing. The next throwback paint scheme we're taking a look at is Parker Kligerman's 2024 Big Machine throwback to Scott Borchetta. Scott Borchetta made 3 starts, I believe, in the Truck Series and won some race, if I'm not mistaken. This looks pretty exciting, pretty awesome stuff. I'm looking forward to seeing on the racetrack during the throwback weekend. This looks pretty amazing. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Tyler Reddick's 2024 Tim Richmond throwback when Tim Richmond drove, I think, a certain number and failed to qualify for the Daytona 500 after DNQing. This looks very interesting, very creative, and honestly out there, but I absolutely think it's pretty decent looking. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Jeremy Clements' 2024 Robert Presley throwback. This looks pretty good in my opinion. I think it's absolutely perfect. The colors match very, very well. It did a really good job on the Robert Presley throwback. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Sheldon Creed's 2024 Ivan Stewart throwback. Ivan Stewart, who is a legend of the off-road scene. I think they did an amazing job on this, and to be honest, I think this should be the scheme they use going forward. It's really good. It looks great. It looks phenomenal. I think JJR knocked it out of the park with this one. Next throwback paint scheme we're taking a look at is Jack Wood's 2024 Tim Flock throwback. Looks pretty good in my opinion. I think that the team did a solid job, that being McAnally Hilgeman. It's pretty solid, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing on the racetrack during throwback weekend. The next throwback paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ryan Preece's 2024 Ryan Preece throwback to him when he ran in modifieds in 2013 when I think he won the championship. They did a solid job on this in my opinion, and it's a really good look at Ryan Preece's career, especially where he came from, which is the modified scene. The next throwback paint scheme we're taking a look at is William Byers' 2024 Jeff Gordon throwback to his 2009 Firestorm scheme. I think this is my least favorite of the Hendrick schemes that happened revealed, but I think Hendrick overall collectively was the best team when it came to throwbacks this year. This still looks really solid. Not a big fan of the black on the front of the car, but it'd probably look a lot better on the racetrack than the rendering shows currently at the moment. And a final throwback paint scheme we're taking a look at is Harrison Burton's 2024 throwback to the original Wood Brothers throwback. This looks great in my opinion. I think did an absolute great job. They had an opportunity to do like a Jeff Burton or at Ellie Sattler throwback, but instead they did the original OG. I think it looks great, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing on the racetrack during throwback weekend. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Kansas purse money. So every time we have a NASCAR Cup, Xfinity Series, and Truck Series race, Bob Pockrass puts out the purse money for that weekend. And according to Bob, for the Cup Series, it's $7,891,315. And for the Truck Series, it's $770,294. For the Cup Series, that's some pretty decent money, a little more than normal because of the fact there's a couple uncharted teams showing up. But for the Truck Series, man, that purse money is not that good. Not a lot of money going into this weekend, just not a ton of money for trucks. I wish there was more for that. Nonetheless, it is a purse money. Disappointing in some instances, but it is some decent money for the Cup Series, but pretty bad money for the Truck Series. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Richard Petty. As it was announced on Wednesday that Richard Petty will give the command for the Cup Series race at Kansas. Richard Petty's given the command multiple times so far in 2024, obviously the king. He's given the command many times so far in recent years, and once again will give the command as obviously this is the 75th year anniversary of Petty Enterprises and Richard Petty being in the sport. So really exciting stuff. Really glad to see that he'll be given the command. I think he's going to do an excellent, and I think he'll do overall a very fantastic job. It's a great opportunity for him. Glad to see he'll get the chance and opportunity to give the command for the Cup Series race at Kansas. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Clayton Green. As it was reported by Joseph Strigley on Wednesday that Clayton Green is going to make his Truck Series debut at North Wilkesboro driving a 04 truck for Roper Racing. Clayton Green made select starts in the ARCA East and West Series in 2015 and 16. I didn't get a chance to literally look up his stats driving for that team, but I have to say I don't think he had overall the best stats. But this is a great opportunity for Clayton Green, and I really hope he can make the best of it because it is a really solid and a really great opportunity for him because driving for a team like Roper Racing, while they're not the fastest organization in the world, it still is a great opportunity to drive at North Wilkesboro especially. He's going to have a great opportunity here, and I hope he can make definitely the best of it. Nonetheless, hopefully do a really good job. It's a good opportunity for him. Obviously, they're going to have to qualify their way in on owner's points because they don't have a lot of owner's points currently at the moment, so they'll have to qualify their way in. We'll see how he ends up doing, and we'll see if he can have a good run with Roper Racing at North Wilkesboro later this month. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about some upcoming tire tests. Now, Bob Pockrass put up the 5 upcoming tire tests for the rest of 2024. The next tire test is going to be on May 28th at Iowa. This will decide the tire that they are going to use when the Cup Series goes there next month in June. Obviously, the Cup Series are making its first Cup run at the track, so they're going to decide what tires they're going to use. If you want my honest opinion, they're probably going to bring tires they use in North Wilkesboro and test them at Iowa. I believe that Kyle Larson is going to be part of that tire test, if I'm not mistaken. Then on June 4th through 5th, they'll be testing at the Indy Oval. Obviously, figuring out what tires they're going to use for the Indy Oval as well. Hopefully, they can get a tire that falls off really, really well. Then on June 26th and 27th, they'll be testing at Watkins Glen, which obviously with the new area that's coming in, they'll be having heart rate monitors, among other things, during this test, and probably having the mouth gears as well. Then on July 16th and 17th, they'll test at Bristol to figure out if they can find a tire that doesn't wear as much, probably. And then finally, the last test will be on August 20th through 21st at Martinsville to figure out what tires they're going to use during the second to last race, so the racing can be a lot better. Very interesting for sure when it comes to the tire test. It's interesting to look at. Those are the tire tests coming up, and hopefully they can televise those and make them out to the public. But let's be real honest, the public is probably not going to be allowed to go to those tests. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Colby Howard. As it was announced yesterday that Colby Howard is going to drive the one truck for Tricon Garage next week at Darlington. Colby Howard has made one start so far in 2024, that being at Atlanta back in March, and I don't think he ran very well if I remember correctly. But this is a great opportunity for Colby Howard. I think Colby does definitely have a little bit of talent. I don't think Colby's like the greatest driver in the world, but it was really disappointing to see that Colby was not going to be running full-time this year in 2024. So I'm glad to see that he does have a chance and opportunity to work with one of the best organizations in the Truck Series, that of course being Tricon Garage. I think he will be able to make the best out of it. I think he does have quite a bit of talent. I really hope he can do a good job. The goal is to run as well as possible because Tricon Garage is obviously one of the best organizations in the Truck Series currently at the moment. So we'll see how he ends up doing. We'll see how he ends up performing. It's a great opportunity for him, though, and I'm glad to see that he will get the chance and opportunity to drive for Tricon Garage at Darlington. Let's see what he does, and we'll see how he performs at Darlington next weekend. He's got a good sponsorship to work with as well. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Noah Gragson. As it was announced earlier this week on Tuesday that Noah Gragson is going to be driving to 30 for Rhett Jones Racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, driving at Charlotte, Nashville, Michigan, and Darlington. Noah Gragson will be joining Rhett Jones Racing. He has driven for them in the past in the late model scene, when Noah Gragson, of course, has driven for Rhett Jones in the Snowball Derby in the past. Noah is also going to run 2 ARCA races this year. I think he's going to be running at Michigan later this year, if I'm not mistaken. And then I think there's another race he has scheduled later down the road. Remember, it was announced earlier this week that Rhett Jones Racing will be joining the NASCAR Xfinity Series with an alliance with Stewart-Haas Racing. Noah Gragson, some are going to consider him a leash, but I wouldn't consider Noah Gragson a leash, considering that while, yes, he did run a majority of last year, I would still consider 2024 to be like a second rookie season for him, considering the fact he didn't get to really finish his rookie year last year, and I think this year has gone a lot better for him. Realistically, Noah, I think, will have a good chance and opportunity, especially with the fact that Rhett Jones is going to be getting help from SHR. I think that they do have a chance and opportunity to run at least in the top 15 and top 20. I think of how much talent Noah has, I think he's going to do a relatively great job. As for the who else they could get at some point to drive, I wouldn't be shocked if we see Frankie Muniz get a chance and opportunity to drive in a seat either. I know Frankie had rumors that Frankie was going to be driving for Joey Gase and running and becoming owner of that team, but I think that sadly has fallen through at this point. So I think it is a great opportunity for this team to have Rhett Jones Racing work with Noah Gragson, and I'm glad that Noah's going to be working with them this season. I really hope he can make the best out of it this year. We'll see how he ends up doing, and we'll see if Noah Gragson can do a great job with Rhett Jones Racing in those 4 races. It's a fantastic and great opportunity for Noah Gragson. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Connor Mosack. As it was announced yesterday that Connor Mosack will drive the 88 for Junior Motorsports for 2 races in 2024. He'll drive for them in Chicago in July, and then he'll run at the Charlotte Roval in late September to early October. They've been teasing that it was going to be someone who's driven for Junior Motorsports' late model program and the car's late model tour, which Connor Mosack does check that box. I'm going to be real and honest, I was a little frustrated when this was initially announced, but when I looked at the race that Connor is racing, I'm not as frustrated about this because Connor Mosack is a decent road course racer. In fact, I think he's won some races in the Trans Am Series, and he's been alright, and to be fair, his 2 top 10 finishes in Xfinity have been at road courses with Sam Hunt Racing. Unfortunately, he hasn't ran that great on ovals, however, which is why he's getting more experience in ARCA with Pinnacle this season. But I'm going to be real and honest, right? I personally would have chosen Connor Zilisch for these 2 races because I think Connor Zilisch would have done amazing at the Chicago Street Course and would have done amazing at the Charlotte Roval. And I think Connor Zilisch needs more experience because I think there's a chance he's going to be full-time in the Xfinity Series next year. But Connor Mosack isn't a bad option for road courses, but they could have gotten Connor Zilisch for these races. They could have got someone else. I just feel like there were better drivers they could have put in this seat, but then again, it is a road course race, and I forgot about that. It's not an oval, so at least he's going in this for road courses, which I think is a better suited for him than ovals, but he definitely for sure needs to get better on ovals if he's going to have a chance and opportunity to run in this series long term. Nonetheless, it's a great opportunity for him. I really hope he can make the best of it because this is probably the best opportunity that he's had so far in his career. Let's see how he ends up doing with this team at those 2 races with Junior Motorsports. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Andretti F1. Now, obviously, we know that Andretti was denied by the FOM and Liberty Media from getting into Formula One. But obviously, Andretti Global has been still, even though they have been denied, they have been pushing really hard to get into Formula One. It has now gotten to the point where Mario Andretti, because of Miami Grand Prix going on, that multiple representatives from Andretti have actually gone to the U.S. government and Congress. And U.S. Representative John James, who is a Republican, I believe, from Detroit, and people from Indianapolis that are part of this are beginning to help Andretti here. The U.S. Congress is getting involved in this, and John James is leading a bipartisan group of members demanding answers from F1 and Liberty Media on why Andretti and Cadillac were denied from getting into Formula One. Now, right now, 12 members are part of this group, and I've seen some F1 journalists who work in F1 saying, 12 out of 535 members of Congress, that is not enough to get something done. But let me tell you something. With how difficult it is for the government to get something done bipartisanly, the fact that there are 12 members who are from both parties who are coming to an agreement that Andretti not being allowed in Formula One is a really big shame. There apparently is supposed to be a meeting this week between the FOM and Andretti representatives on getting into F1. But the fact you have the U.S. government who is getting involved and antitrust laws are coming in, because what people forget is Liberty Media is a U.S.-based company. That's why that they are really pushing, because the FOM is owned by, you guessed it, Liberty Media. So that's why they're trying to really push to get Andretti in. And obviously Andretti wants to get into Formula One. We all know this. They want to push in there. They want to have an American pipeline of drivers. And if they are finally at some point approved, which I think with the U.S. government getting involved, I think that the FOM and Liberty Media are not going to have a choice, because they can investigate Liberty Media for other things that I'm not going to get into here. Nonetheless, I really hope Andretti does get approved. They deserve to be in Formula One, and it would be a massive shambles and a shame if Andretti does not get into Formula One. I think it's really crazy that you have the U.S. government getting involved in this, because in my personal opinion, having the U.S. government back you and support you in something, I think is absolutely huge. So I'm really excited about this, at least having the U.S. government involved. It's crazy it's gotten to this point. I really hope they can find a way to get this figured out soon, and I hope there's a way for them to get into Formula One, because Andretti deserves to be in F1, and they deserve to have a pipeline going into Formula One. So nonetheless, it's very crazy for sure, and it's kind of huge story to see that Andretti has finally have people that are backing them, and it looks like that there's a chance that they could get into Formula One with the help from Andretti. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Matt DeBenedetto. Now, Dustin Albino wrote a very good article on Matt DeBenedetto about him humbling up. But also in that article, it was confirmed that Matt DeBenedetto is going to be driving the 38 for Viking Motorsports for the remainder of 2024. This includes Darlington next weekend and probably the remainder of the road courses that are on the schedule this season. This is a really huge opportunity for Matt DeBenedetto. So far this year, he has made 5 starts at Viking Motorsports throughout the 2024 season, and currently Matt DeBenedetto has brought that team from about 40th in the owner's points up to 34th in the owner's points, and they were actually in the top 33, but unfortunately last week at Dover, they got involved in a wreck and incident with Shane Van Gisbergen, and they finished 32nd in the race. But Matt DeBenedetto, I've always stated and have said he's a pretty underrated driver. Every car that he has gotten into in his career, he has outperformed that equipment. Look what he did at the Wood Brothers a few years ago. He got them to the playoffs in 2020. 2021 was a little bit of a down step in performance, but they still had a chance to win a few races. The guy that replaced him, that being Harrison Burton, has absolutely struggled in that car. And I don't think if Harrison Burton is even going to finish the season at this point with how bad he's been performing this year. So that's why I think Matty D's a better driver, because he got them to the playoffs and was way more consistent. Then you look at what's happened with Rackley. Matty D got into the playoffs in 2023. He won at Talladega, albeit it was very controversial in 22, and got to the playoffs last year and was let go and nearly got to the round of 8. And this year with Viking, he's done a phenomenal job. If he could just continue to be humble and keep in his lane, which sounds like he's starting to do that at this point, I think Matt DeBenedetto could have a very successful career and still have a chance to go back Cup Series racing. Matt DeBenedetto is still, I believe, only 32 or 33. We know there were rumors earlier this year also that he could have been headed to Kaulig Racing in the Cup Series, which would have been an amazing, huge opportunity if he got that chance to drive for them. So I really am glad to see that he's found a ride going forward, and it does sound like they're wanting to have him next year as well, which could be a very interesting little silly season tidbit going forward, is it sounds like they're wanting to have him full-time for the 2025 season, which I think it would be a great opportunity for him if he got to run full-time for Viking Motorsports next season. I really hope he gets a chance to as well, because I rate him very, very highly. I think he's a much better driver than people give him credit for. Yes, he's made a lot of mistakes off the racetrack, but Matt DeBenedetto has all the talent in the world, and he can back it up with the performance. So I really hope he gets to run the rest of the year, which sounds like he's going to, and I think it's a great opportunity, and glad to see that he looks like he'll be driving for Viking Motorsports for the remainder of the 2024 season, and probably will be with that team in 2025. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Will Brown. As it was reported by VA Sleuth yesterday or last night that Will Brown is going to make his NASCAR Cup Series debut next month in June at Sonoma Raceway, driving the number 33 car for Richard Childress Racing. Will Brown, I believe, either drives for Erebus or AAA Engineering and has been rumored to maybe coming over to NASCAR recently after it was announced earlier this week that Brody Kosecki is not currently interested in racing in NASCAR. Obviously, Brody Kosecki had 2 races scheduled this year with Erebus, with the 33 team for Richard Childress Racing, as Erebus and RCR have a really big technical alliance. But remember, last year, we saw Will Brown actually drive in the GT World Championship at Circuit of the Americas, and Will Brown replaced Brody Kosecki. Apparently, Peter Addison, who does a lot of stuff with Mobile X and Walmart, he had a falling out with Brody Kosecki because Brody decided to return to Erebus. And they've chosen now Will Brown to make his debut. I love this supercar invasion that's going on currently at the moment. You've got Cam Waters, who's going to be running the Truck Series race tomorrow night, depending on the weather, which the weather does look a lot better. And of course, you have Shane Van Gisbergen, who's working his way through the NASCAR ranks, and he's done a phenomenal and incredible job in a select race he ran so far and running full-time Xfinity. And I think there's a good chance that SVG is going to be a full-time Cup driver in 2025. I think that Will Brown is an extremely talented driver, and I'm looking forward to this. I don't know what my realistic expectations are. There's going to be a lot more practice during that weekend because there's going to have a longer practice session with the repave. And RCR's road course program has honestly not been that bad. So if I had to make a prediction where Will Brown is going to finish in his debut, I think that he's going to finish inside the top 15 in his debut. That's my realistic expectation. I think that should be the goal for Will Brown. I'm excited to see what he can do, and I really would love to see him run some Xfinity Series races going forward as well. Obviously, with him being focused on supercars right now, I don't know if this would mean maybe going into the future we'll see him make more starts. Maybe we see him run the Chicago Street Course because that 33 car was all scheduled for Chicago, and having Will Brown and SVG against each other in that event would be phenomenal and incredible. So I'm really happy for Will Brown. It's an amazing opportunity for him, and I think he will absolutely make the best of it with the opportunity he has. So glad to see him get the opportunity. Congratulations to Will Brown on making his NASCAR Cup Series debut at Sonoma with Richard Childress Racing. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Michael Jordan. Now, there has been a lot of talk and chatter surrounding charters throughout this last week because Jeff Gluck and Jordan Bianchi wrote a very interesting article surrounding the charter agreement. And it sounds like that 2311 Racing is the most outspoken when it comes to this. Curtis Polk stated in that article that teams, if they wanted to, they could just not show up. Now, apparently, they're supposed to have meetings with 2311 Racing in the next few weeks. While NASCAR has a meeting with other teams, and it sounds like there's some other teams that are interested in getting this deal done. Denny Hamlin stated that he's been reaching a boiling point, and some teams are with him at this point, that he's reaching a boiling point when it comes to it, and they're starting to go public more, which some teams do not like Denny Hamlin going public. And now you have Michael Jordan, who is saying that not making the charters permanent would be a big miss from NASCAR, and also that the sport would die if charters would not become permanent. Obviously, there's a few key pillars that are when you look at the charter agreement. One, the teams want the charters to absolutely become permanent. There's one person holding that up from becoming permanent, and that person is Jim France. I'd have to imagine that people like Ben Kennedy and Steve Phelps, Steve O'Donnell probably would be okay with making the charter agreement permanent. But when his charter agreement was originally kind of drafted, a lot of people were kind of thinking at first, like, did people realize that this could be a problem if they didn't make it permanent from the get-go? Because if they were looking to make this charter agreement, why not just make it permanent, right? And they never made it permanent from the get-go, and that's what's really, really concerning to me. And I'm actually starting to think that there's probably some teams at this point that are probably on NASCAR's side, and they're wanting to get this charter agreement done because they're probably looking at the deal, especially some of the smaller teams, and they're thinking, hey, this deal might not be so bad. At some point, I do think, because NASCAR, I think, has more of the leverage when it comes to the TV deal than the teams do. I do agree that the teams need more money, and NASCAR has said that they're probably going to give the teams more money. I think they're going to give them around 42 to 43% of the TV revenue, which the teams are wanting closer to 50% of that TV revenue going forward. To me, when I look at this deal and I look at this situation, Obviously, 20 through 11 is the most outspoken because Michael Jordan, Curtis Polk, and Denny Hamlin are three of the biggest names in the sport currently at the moment. I do believe that a deal is going to get done. I believe it. I don't know when it's going to get done. It's probably going to get done later this year. And there's going to be a lot of pressing talking points that are going to come out with this. You're going to hear a lot more people saying things about it. We've seen Brad Keselowski say a few things and Jimmy Johnson say things as well. But I think you're starting to see a turn at this point. And I do think a charter agreement at some point is going to get done. Obviously, hearing Michael Jordan say that it would be a big miss if the charter agreement wouldn't get permanent is definitely interesting. Obviously, there could be more charters added going forward with the charter deal in the next deal with the media, and obviously with a new manufacturer rumor to be coming in. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens in regards to that. It'll be a fun story to watch too, and we'll see what happens with the charter agreement. Nonetheless, it sounds like there's some teams that are probably for behind the scenes that are smaller, but obviously 20 through 11 is one of the big teams, and they're not negotiating with the NNC anymore. They're basically negotiating with other parties at this particular point. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of three major stories of today's episode as we're talking about Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Now, I did a video talking about this yesterday, but it was announced yesterday late morning that Ricky Stenhouse Jr. has signed a 3-year contract extension with JTG Daugherty Racing, which will keep Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in the number 47 car. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. has been with JTG Daugherty since the 2020 season, and obviously it's very interesting with the rumors going around with JTG, which we'll talk about here in just a sec. But according to what Jordan Bianchi reported, this deal got finalized last week at Talladega. So this has been basically finalized for the last few weeks, and now they have officially signed this. Look, JTG Daugherty Racing really likes Ricky Stenhouse Jr., so it makes a lot of sense. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., his biggest accomplishment with JTG Daugherty Racing, of course, is winning the Daytona 500 last year in 2023 and making the playoffs on pure speed. They would have made the playoffs on pure points, if I'm not mistaken, and ran in the top 20 pretty much the whole entire season. Now, so far in 2024, the year has not gone as well for the organization. So far, they've obviously fallen off quite a bit in performance. They're back around 27th, 28th in the points, and right now they've been one of the lower teams in the standings. But what's really interesting about this signing is we talked about this a couple weeks ago, but there were rumors that JTG Daugherty Racing was going to shut down their program because of Kroger. And if you look at the report, Gordon Smith, who's one of the team owners, and it mentions team owner Gordon Smith, not co-owner, team owner Gordon Smith stated something, and Brad Daugherty also made a statement. You know who didn't say anything? Tad and Jody Kushecter, who've been with JTG Daugherty for many, many years. They didn't say anything. And then you also look at Kroger, there was no mention on Kroger. There's obviously a lot of rumors and chatter circulating that Kroger and Tad and Jody are going to be headed over to Joe Gibbs Racing next year, meaning that the Kroger brand would end up leaving, which is why this is so surprising to see. Obviously, this charter could still go up in basically purchase, but there could be some new ownership. And Ricky Stenhouse Jr. stated yesterday that there are apparently some new exciting stuff going on toward the future, which indicates to me that there is going to be an ownership change that is happening. And obviously, we know that there are some teams that are looking to sell charters. SHR, there's one of the organizations that's looking to sell maybe up to 2 charters at the end of the year. And College Racing is another team that I think could sell a charter at the end of this year. And you've got some teams that are looking to expand going into next year. Trackhouse Racing, they've got 5 drivers under contract with Connor Zilic and Shane Van Gisbergen and Zane Smith, not driving with the team. You've obviously got Rosh Hassan and Daniel Suarez, who are currently driving for the team and organization. You've got 20 through 11 Racing, who we know wants to expand going into next year. They want to expand to basically another car. They've got drivers in the lower series like a Chandler Smith and Corey Heim, who are reserve drivers, I think, for the team. And then, of course, you've got Erik Almirola, Sheldon Creed could be available. Maybe getting Carl Evers, Kurt Busch out of retirement would be very interesting. And then, of course, you have Legacy who wants to expand. You got Corey Heim, who's a reserve driver, who, of course, we'll talk about here in just a little bit. And then you've obviously got some other little teams like RFK Racing who wants to expand to 3 full-time cars going into the future. I think they want to be a 4-car team. You've got Haley Deegan, lower series, Riley Hurst, Cole Custer, Matt DeBenedetto, even in some particular aspect, and even Frankie Muniz as well. And then, of course, you have Chase Briscoe who could go there. And then you've got other teams like Junior Motorsports, who's looking to move up full-time next year to the Cup Series. At some aspect, I know Junior kind of said he's not interested at the moment, but I think that Junior could potentially move up in the next few years. Obviously, with the ownership change coming, I wonder who could be that owner. Maybe Dale Jr. is going to get invested to bring Junior Motorsports up. Maybe they get Kevin Harvick somehow, considering Kevin Harvick has Ricky Stenhouse Jr. as a KHI client. But when I look at JTG Doherty, I think there is an ownership change that is going to be coming. The question is going to be, who are going to be those owners that are going to be coming in? It's going to be very interesting to see what happens in regards to that when it comes to potential ownership change coming. We know Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is going to be with the team going forward for the next 3 years. It's very interesting to see what happens, and we'll follow it as time goes on and progresses. I think it's a great opportunity. Hopefully the team can improve, and whatever ownership change is coming to the team going forward, we'll have to kind of follow it as time goes on. It looks like there is an ownership change that is going to be happening here relatively soon. And now we're going to jump on to the next major story of today's episode as we're talking about Erik Jones. As it was officially confirmed yesterday afternoon that Erik Jones has been medically cleared to make a return to the NASCAR Cup Series by doctors. However, he will not be returning this weekend at Kansas as he'll sit out one more week, which means Corey Heim will drive the number 43 car once again at Kansas. But Erik Jones will be returning at Darlington next weekend. Erik Jones also put out a statement later that day, about 20 minutes after the announcement came out, saying, "I have respected the decision that Legacy has made. It makes a lot more sense." I am actually very, very shocked that he's returning this quickly, but I'm also pleasantly surprised to say that he is making a return this quickly. Erik Jones, for those who do not know, suffered a minor fracture in the lower vertebrae of his back, a hairline fracture in the lower vertebrae, after suffering a very scary wreck that involved him, Bubba Wallace, and John Hunter Nemechek going up at turn number 3 at Talladega. And I thought that Erik Jones, to be honest, was going to sit out a lot longer than he is going to be sitting out. But obviously with Darlington not having as much banking that they have to go down, if you hit the outside wall really, really hard, it's not going to be as bad of a hit. And obviously with how strong Erik Jones has been at Darlington, it makes a lot of sense. But again, I am definitely a little shocked to see him returning as quick as he did. And we'll get to that in just a second. But let's go back to talking about Corey Heim. Corey Heim, in his Cup Series debut last weekend at Dover, did a very solid job. I think he finished 25th in the race and had some really good speed times. I think that was stated by Toby Christie's group over there that basically think he had 9 of the fastest laps throughout the entire race and was keeping up with the leaders at times as well. Though he did finish 25th, he probably should have finished higher than he did. With how strong Legacy's been at times and at Kansas, especially because Erik Jones finished third the last time we were there, I can see Corey Heim getting a top 15. He's my pick to win the Truck Series race. I think he's going to win there, certainly. But I think that we're going to see Corey Heim do a great job this weekend at Kansas. As for Erik Jones returning at Darlington, yeah, it was released in a statement that Erik Jones won twice. I think it's Erik Jones' best track. And I can see Erik Jones going out there and competing. But the question will be, will he be 100% healthy? Because in my honest opinion, while I am very happy to see that Erik Jones is returning 2 weeks after, I'm worried that they're rushing him a little bit too quickly. I would have sat Erik Jones out at least a little bit longer, maybe wait till after the Coco 600 weekend and then make a return. Because Erik Jones, 84 points out, but if he gets a win, he's locked into the playoffs. But at the same time, if they feel like he's ready to go back and he feels like he's ready to go back as quick as he can, why not bring him back as quick as possible, I guess. But the most important thing is just don't put yourself in a bad position where you're involved in another wreck, because if you injure your back more, it could lead to more serious injuries. So, nonetheless, I'm very happy to see that Erik Jones is making a comeback and return next weekend at Darlington. It's a really good track for him. He's won 2 Southern 500s, and I think that he could be a favorite going into that weekend at Darlington. Again, he's been great at that racetrack. And obviously, now you look at what happens going forward. If Erik Jones is fast enough and the legacy cars can get a little bit quicker, I can see Erik Jones winning a race. There's a lot of good tracks coming up. We've got a Southern 500 now in the regular season, which we know that Erik Jones has always been strong at Darlington, and especially in the Southern 500. We've seen some pace and speed on the super speedways for Erik Jones in the past, and I think there's a lot of great tracks coming up for Erik Jones going forward where I feel confident that he can show pace and speed. I consider Erik Jones to be one of the more underrated drivers in the NASCAR Cup Series today. He's a very, very great driver. He's always gotten the best out of equipment. He did a solid job when he drove for JGR in the past. So I expect that Erik Jones is going to be a very solid and great contender driving for this team at Darlington. So I'm excited to see him back. Again, I really wish they would have taken a tiny bit more time to let him rest a little bit longer. But at same token, same time, if Erik Jones feels like he's ready to go back, into a NASCAR Cup Series car, I think let him do it. Why not at this point, right? It's a great opportunity for Erik Jones to get back with the team that he started with this year. And obviously, it's just fun to see that he is coming back. Again, hope he can be ready to go, and it's a great opportunity. And again, I'm just excited to see that Erik Jones is back. I wasn't expecting to be back so soon. I thought he'd be back around the Coast 600 weekend because we saw Erik Almirola take 7 weeks for an injury when he suffered that at Kansas in 2017. Denny Hamlin took 4 weeks with his injury, and Alex Bowman, he missed 4 or 5 races and then made his return at the Coca-Cola 600. So nonetheless, glad to see Erik Jones making a comeback and return. Hope he can make the best of it and do a really good job of legacy at Darlington next weekend. And now we're going to head on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about Shane Van Gisbergen. Now, I kind of talked about this story earlier this week, but if any of you haven't heard at this point, Shane Van Gisbergen will not be running the AllStar race in 2024. Shane Van Gisbergen became eligible to run the AllStar race this year in 2024 because last year he won at the Chicago Street Course in that number 91 car in his debut, which is still one of the most impressive things that has happened so far. And because he's been declared for the NASCAR Xfinity Series this year, he had eligibility to run because he's full-time in NASCAR currently. He has the opportunity to run in the All-Star race this year, or had the opportunity. Unfortunately, because of Colligan Trackhouse not fielding a third car, because last year they actually fielded a third car for Chandler Smith, that being Colligan Racing, and Trackhouse could have fielded a car, that Project 91 entry, because they are not fielding an entry for a third entry for this time around. They will not have SVG behind the wheel of a seat this year. I'm going to be honest, right? I am definitely disappointed. I understand them not fielding a third car because of the money thing, and obviously with the whole charter negotiations and a charter agreement going on and stuff right now, it makes a lot of sense not have as many open cars. But at the same token, in same time, if he was available to run and you want to get him more experience behind the wheel of a cup car, especially for next year, which we'll get to in just a second, it would have made a lot of sense. And he's got funding partners that really, in my opinion, should have absolutely been open to it. He's got companies like Red Bull who work with him, WeatherTech, Quadlock, and even Wendy's. I think they would have absolutely been fine with him getting the chance and opportunity to make a start in the All-Star race this year, because I think the more experience he gets, the better it's going to be. Because many believe that he is going to run full-time next year, including myself. I think that Shane Van Gisbergen is going to be a full-time NASCAR Cup Series driver in 2025. Because he's got all the talent in the world. He's done a great job this year. He ran really well in the select cup starts he's had so far. I know the finishes haven't shown for, but he's had a lot of great runs driving for like Colleague this year. And honestly, been one of the few drivers who's driven that 16 car that has looked really, really stout. And if you want to get him better prepared for next year especially, I think you need to allow him to run as many races as possible, especially in the Cup Series. I get that AJ Allmendinger has been a more prime driver for the 16, and it makes a lot of sense to put AJ in the 16, right? AJ won last year at the Roval, and AJ's got more experience in the next gen than SVG. But at the same token and same time, it would have been amazing and great to see Shane Van Gisbergen compete against drivers like Bubba Wallace if he makes the All-Star race, like Chase Elliott, like Kyle Larson or Kevin Harvick, like Kyle Busch, like guys like Ross Chastain and Daniel Suarez, guys like Brad Keselowski as well, and just all the drivers in the Cup Series competing against him in a smaller field would have made a lot of sense. And to me, I just think the more experience that he gets, the better prepared he is going to be for next year. Because I expect him by next year to be announced as a full-time Cup Series driver. There's a lot of silly season news that's coming down the road, and I think SVG will be announced as a full-time Cup driver for 2025. As for the rest of the Cup schedule for Shane Van Gisbergen, we know he's going to be running the Coast 600 after that, so he'll get some Cup experience there. He is running at the Chicago Street Course, which you look at the Street Course race, I do expect that Shane Van Gisbergen is going to be a front runner for that race. You look, he's got, I think, the Charlotte Roval. No, I don't think he's got the Roval schedule, but he's got both Talladega races scheduled and then Las Vegas as well. And I think Homestead's on there and Daytona's on there as well. So he's got some mile and a half. He's got some road courses like Watkins Glen as well. And I think he's got a lot of races coming up that are scheduled for him. But I just wish that Colleague Racing and Trackhouse especially would have been able to field a car for him to run the All-Star race. Because he is truly an All-Star, and I think that Australian audience especially would have loved to see him get the chance and opportunity. I get why they, like I said, didn't field the car for him, right? But I think it would have made sense. And it would have been cool to maybe see them, instead of having Kevin Harvick behind the wheel of that 5 car during the weekend, I would love to see SVG at least get a chance to run the practice and qualifying session, because I know that Larson and SVG rate each other from what I remember, so it would have been cool to see SVG get a call from Hendrick Motorsports and maybe work with them, because I know that track guys Hendrick haven't always had the greatest history at this point, but I think it would have made a lot of sense for him to at least get a little bit more experience behind the wheel. But then again, we are also going to see Shane Van Gisbergen make a ton of starts with the team this year. He's going to get some truck starts going forward. I hope he gets to run the late model race in Norfolk, because I remember correctly, he had some late model races scheduled for this year, but I don't think he's ran them at this point. Nonetheless, it is a great opportunity. It's unfortunate to see that he's not going to run the AllStar race this year. I would have loved to see him get the chance. He's a talented driver, in my opinion, and he always gets the best out of equipment. Even though I know he's kind of struggled in Xfinity, he gets better throughout the races, and I think he's a good driver. So I really hope in the future he gets a chance and an opportunity. Maybe they change their minds for the next 2 weeks, but I don't expect them to change their minds, which is really disappointing and very, very unfortunate. He's not going to run the All-Star race, which is really, really disappointing. I would love to see Shane Van Gisbergen run the All-Star race this year. So, that is going to be today's NASCAR news and motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support my Patreon as well. Links description below that, and comment your thoughts on today's video. Do you wish SVG was running the All-Star race? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about Erik Jones returning next week at Darlington? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Later today on the channel, I've got a pretty big announcement to talk about what's going on with the channel, among other things. Tomorrow, I'm going to have potentially a silly season update depending on the weather, and also if the Truck Series race happens, and if Cup qualifying happens, we'll have reactions to that. Then on Sunday, we'll have the NASCAR Cup Series race video and the starting lineup video. And then Monday, we should have a NASCAR news. Be discussing news over the course of the last couple days. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.